Hi, my name is David Zuniga, founder of Tactical Civics. For almost 30 years, I was an architectural engineer designing schools, churches, auto dealerships, and industrial plants. I also raised cattle, taught scuba, flew missionary trips into Mexico, and founded 4 classical Christian K-12 schools in 3 states. When our corrupt government took part in the 9/11 attack on America, I knew I had to do something. I spent over a year in monastic isolation in the Texas Hill Country. Praying every day, I asked God to show me how exactly America was hijacked and how we can end the hijacking. The Lord graciously answered that prayer. After reading and studying 110 books and hundreds of papers, websites, and blogs, I wrote the first draft America Again Declaration. With my nose buried in R&D with 38 other volunteers designing Tactical Civics, I remind myself that most of this is going to be new to you, so this video will assume nothing. The Founding Fathers gave us everything we'll present in this video except the modern technology that makes today the most exciting time in the history of the world. We know that many Americans feel just the opposite. Like so many things we loved about America are being destroyed. The original hijacking of our Constitution began when Abe Lincoln was president. Most people don't know that Abe Lincoln and Karl Marx were mutual admirers, and that Marx was Horace Greeley's star foreign correspondent for the New York Tribune. Yes, Washington, D.C. is the most lawless, ruthless city-state in history. It rules the world with a crooked claw. But this is old news. By the time Woodrow Wilson was president, 8 out of the 10 planks in Marx's Communist Manifesto had already become Washington, D.C. policy. Our governments, federal, state, county, and many cities, have been communist by Marx's definition for over a century. Let that sink in. This is not the end of the world. And the evil ones, by the way, are losing their momentum. Now, let's begin with basic civics because most of us didn't get it in school. America, fundamentally, what is it? What's in our collective DNA under the surface that made our civilization and our republic so different from any other on earth? Well, strategically, the big picture is that America's the society, the liberty, and the economy that is secured by our U.S. Constitution. Okay, but what is the U.S. Constitution? Now, this is really crucial. The U.S. Constitution is America's highest human law in which we, the people, create, define, and limit a federal servant. It is not a law for we, the people. It is a law by we the people. Now this is basic civics, but it's bedrock that most Americans are ignorant of. If you survey world history, you'll find monarchies and oligarchies and plutocracies, that just means rule by the wealthy, and kleptocracies, and that just means rule by thieves. But even though we set it all out in our highest law, we Americans have never actually lived out popular sovereignty. Obviously, neither has any other population in history. So now we've founded Tactical Civics because it's time. Now, where did the name Tactical Civics originate? Well, tactical is defined as operations that are smaller, closer to base, and of less long-term significance than strategic operations. Remember, we said that strategically, America is defined by our Constitution, the highest law, where we the people take king of the hill position. Remember that. So civics, in our American context, is who's boss. That's all civics means, who's boss. Our mission at Tactical Civics is to educate, inspire, support, supply, and organize members for true patriotism. We define patriotism as we the people making our servant government obey the U.S. Constitution. Today, there are people and groups who want to radically change the Constitution. And there are other groups who say the Constitution is dead. We're the only organization helping Americans actually enforce that highest American law. And guess what? We, the people, are the only authority over the U.S. Constitution who can see to its enforcement. You see, we, the people, are the top, the apex sovereign over all American government. Through the Constitution, we created, defined, and limited a federal servant in 3 branches. You see them here. And then we authorized Congress, Article 1 branch, to create and limit its own inferior federal courts. So always remember this, fellow American. A federal judge is the creature of our creature, Congress. Even if that judge sees himself or herself as having imperial powers over entire states' referendum votes, that isn't true. And in Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution, we the people grant Congress the ability to clip the wings of the federal courts, including the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, notice the basically conservative nature of our population. Once you leave the major metro areas, notice America's still very conservative. Unfortunately, we the people don't know our own authority and duty, so devious men with lust for power have taken us hostage, all of us. And you know what? Our founding fathers knew it was going to happen like this, so they gave us a relief valve in the very first original right in our Bill of Rights. Let me tell you that story. Did you know that in the 1787 Constitutional Convention, George Washington did not speak to the group until the very last day of that 4-month-long convention? He had been prodded by Nathaniel Gorham to ask the delegates to make a last-minute change in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 4 of the Constitution, to make House districts not 40,000 people, as it was written that day, but 30,000 people, smaller district, to limit politicians' power. So that day, after Washington spoke, they had a unanimous vote of the convention, and Article 1, Section 2, Clause 4 was changed from 40,000 to 30,000 people per district. Small districts. 2 years later, George Washington's vital principle of small house districts was the very first article in the Bill of Rights presented by James Madison's committee to get the states to finally ratify the Constitution. Article the first of the Bill of Rights. It reads like this. After the first enumeration required by the first article of the Constitution, there shall be 1 representative for every 30,000, until the number shall amount to 100. After which the proportion shall be so regulated by Congress that there shall be not less than 100 representatives, nor less than 1 representative for every 40,000 persons, until the number of representatives shall amount to 200, after which the proportion shall be so regulated by Congress that there shall not be less than 200 representatives, nor more than 1 representative for every 50,000 persons. Now that was Article the first, the very first article they put in the Bill of Rights originally. I'll bet you didn't know that. 12 states ratified the first article, but only 11 sent their paperwork in to the U.S. archivist. After ratifying, Connecticut had second thoughts because 1 word was mistranscribed on the copies that were sent out to the states. It read not more than, where it was supposed to say not less than. So Connecticut held back their paperwork. Literally, they stored it in the basement. But ever since George Washington's dramatic plea on the last day of the convention, it was always clear what that original First Amendment means. You can even see it on the facsimile copies of the amendment as printed in Philadelphia newspapers back then. Clearly, Article the First says, there shall not be less than 200 representatives nor less than one representative for every 50,000 persons. It was clear what they meant. Small districts. So today, the original first right in our Bill of Rights is the only one not yet fully ratified. Now look at this. This is the number of U.S. House districts we should have today if we were following the Founding Fathers' design. Imagine this. Look at your state. For instance, if you live in California, you should have 783 small local districts. Hundreds of small conservative California communities would finally have the first representation they've had in Congress and in the U.S. Electoral College in over a century. Imagine that. But what do we have today? California only has 53, mostly going to the populous liberal cities and leaving all the small towns and rural California unrepresented. Imagine states like Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, all with only one representative. Districts today are huge, from 700,000 to over 900,000 people. This is exactly the corruption that the Founding Fathers sought to avoid and why they made this the first right in the Bill of Rights. You see, today industry just buys these seats. Politicians spend up to 75% of their entire year fundraising for the next huge, expensive election. So, here's our solution to take America back. We break up Congress into small, relatively powerless districts as the Founding Fathers intended. We finish ratifying that amendment in 27 more states out of the 39 that haven't yet held their vote. 75% of the states is what's required to pass a new amendment, according to Article 5 of the Constitution. Now, to make it clear, this isn't a call for a new constitutional convention under Article 5. This item has been open for action in the states since 1789. It just needs 27 more votes. Incidentally, this has been done before. In 1983, a University of Texas student named Greg Watson noticed that the original Second Amendment had only been ratified by 9 states. So over a 10-year period, Watson was able to get 29 more states to hold their ratification votes, and in May of 1992, 203 years after the first vote on the original Second Amendment, it finally became the 27th Amendment. Since we'll have over 6,400 members in the U.S. House, we bring Congress home. We keep our servants in their hometown full time, where we get to oversee and influence them, rather than lobbyists schmoozing and industry bigwigs socializing with them. More importantly, though, think of the millions of honest, competent Americans who would run for a House seat if they don't have to live or work in D.C., and if they only had a small office with a staff of 2 and only had to serve the 50,000 people who are closest to them. Millions of Americans are qualified and would be willing to do it. We'll transform American government more fundamentally than the American people ever have done before. Now, here are the main features of this proposed legislation, the Bring Congress Home Act. Members receive only one modest office, and it has to be located in their home district. They are limited to 2 terms, House or Senate. Congressmen are limited to a staff of 2. Senators can have up to 6. Congressmen receive half of their president's salary, because their district will be 1/15 as large as it is today. They will receive no benefits. We want short-term statesmen, not careerist politicians. And finally, each member's budget will be audited and reported annually online. That's the Bring Congress Home Act. Makes sense, doesn't it? We're the employers, they're the employees. We are the sovereigns, they are the servants. Why do we have this backwards? Why are they running their own show, setting their own salaries and terms of employment? This is absurd. We don't do this in any other area of American life. There's more to Tactical Civics. Our main long-term product is a mobile app called the America Again Indictment Engine. It's law enforcement, not politics. It'll work optimally with less than half of 1% of the population taking responsibility. Long-term, we also have other reform laws to recover all that we've lost to Washington, D.C. organized crime and its so-called deep state. You know, the facts have been out there for over 75 years. Our lives are being run by organized crime. This lawless period of our history must end, and Tactical Civics is the lawful, peaceful, efficient way to get it done. Tactical Civics is the American people setting mankind's new gold standard, actual popular sovereignty. We the people stipulated in our Constitution. Now at last, we the people will enforce it. If you're the kind of person who's always been different from your neighbors, if you're always driven to a challenge for the betterment of mankind, join us in this historic adventure that our descendants will read about in history books. But more than that, our descendants need us to take responsibility now.